Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Pastor Jerry Cook, back for another opportunity to talk about the two things we are not supposed to talk about in public, religion and politics. And yes, like a fine drink, they do indeed mix. Well, we've got a full slate for you today, and Lord willing, both of our guests will call in here very shortly. But our first guest will be Roxanne Hoge, who, of course, is the chairman of the LA GOP, or chairwoman, I guess. I forget how they would call that today in the whole PC culture. But chairman, chairperson, chairwoman of the LA GOP. Looking forward to having her call in. And then at the bottom of the hour, a Southern California staple, Jennifer Horn from the Morning Answer, AM 870, will be calling in and talking a little bit about California politics. There's a lot to talk about. Some of the talking points today, just really here off the top of my head, I want to talk a little bit in a few minutes about pro-Trump swing among Hispanics. It's amazing with all of the negative press about the ICE raids in Minnesota and in other parts of the country that Hispanics would actually be trending towards Trump. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. We're welcoming Chairwoman of the LA GOP, Roxanne Hoge. How are you?
I am fine. I'm so upset I'm not getting to be with you in person today, but there's always something happening in our 4,600 square miles of LA, so we will catch up another time.
Well, you'd be pleased to know that I actually combed my hair because I expected you to be here, but I totally wasted my hairspray.
No. I'm sure you look fabulous, and your family and friends will appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing you this Saturday. And real quickly, let's talk about those two events that are happening this Saturday here in my neck of the woods in Santa Clarita. We've got a fundraising boot camp and also a 2026 election kickoff. Talk about the importance of both of those events that are happening simultaneously this coming Saturday.
And why they're important to have in your neck of the woods is because North Los Angeles County is where we elect Republicans, especially to partisan office. Now, LA County, and I know this is a horrifyingly large number and people are going to be shocked, there are over 1,700 elected offices in LA County, 1,700, something like that. And the good news is that Republicans fill 552 of them, but we need more because those people are the farm team that are going to run for races like Assembly and State Senate and Congress later. So people who are serving on school boards and water boards and city councils everywhere except for crazy LA, we need them. We need them so much. And so the first thing, the fundraising boot camp, it's also fundraising and strategy boot camp, and it's being run by the California Policy Center and Clio, and they are helping candidates, people like you and I that go, but I don't know where to start. You're running now, and you believe of many myths about running, like there's a pot of money coming to you from somewhere. Do the boot camp because you really in that hour and a half, 2 hours, you're going to get everything you need to learn to run for one of those offices.
Well, if I can just quickly dispel any rumors, Roxanne, I am running away from running. So I'm not running at all. But this particular election kickoff this Saturday, there is a veritable who's who of people that are going to be there. Of course, yours truly, Pastor Cook, will be there. You, Roxanne, will be there. Jennifer Horn, who, by the way, we have calling in at the bottom of the hour, is going to be there as well. And
yes, she's going to be there at the beginning. Susan Shelley, Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco's unfortunately in D.C. He's sending people. Don Wagner, Michael Gates, a bunch of candidates, some statewide, but a lot of them, local LA candidates who are running for Assembly, Jason Gibbs, for Congress. And why is that important? Why is it important for a regular person to come on Saturday to the campaign kickoff? Because I think those of us on the right, we have lives and jobs and families, and so we don't live and breathe politics all the time. And that's why we get our butts kicked by people who do. And we think, oh, I'm going to vote in November. Oops, that's too late. We need you to learn how to turn out the vote in May, not June. Like June is when it ends. The primary election, they start dumping those ballots May 5th. So let's all get together on Saturday. It's $20. The link for RSVP is on the lagop.org, lagop.org website. And we'd love to have you come down, get some merch, take some pictures with people, feel like you're not alone. That's the most important thing, I think.
Before we let you go, Roxanne Hoge, I wanted to ask you a real quick question, and maybe you're not at liberty to tell our audience at the moment, but I do believe we have two very solid candidates who are running for governor here in California. I have had the privilege of meeting both and interviewing both, and I like both of them. And in every poll, it seems like Hilton and Bianco are either in the top two or at least in the top three, which is remarkable for us here in California. First and foremost, do you think that this might be the year that California finally does it? We turn red, at least at the state level, when it comes to the governor's race. And second of all, how important is it for us to get behind one of these two candidates going into the election?
Well, the first thing is, could we have some sanity from the city of LA to the county of LA to Sacramento? I think we can this year, and there's a couple of reasons, and it has to do with two M's, math and Machiavelli. So what the Democrats did with the ridiculous top two system that we got foisted on us, which I happen to think is un-American because it takes away the ability of people to choose their representative for their party. And that party, by the way, it could be the Greens. It could be the Libertarians, which are just Republicans who want to smoke pot. Like, it could be any party. They're all cut out of the system because of top two. However, here's where the math comes in. We have two really strong Republicans running for governor. And there are 11 decent people with war chests and name recognition and who are looking for another space on the term limit merry-go-round that is Democrat politics. And so if even four of them stay in, what would be amazing is to see two Republicans make the top two, right? Then all of a sudden we would see the end of the top two. But the other thing we have to remember out of LA, and this is where the math really makes a difference, I know that it can feel, like, why bother vote? We never win. Well, first of all, we won with Nathan Hochman. We won with Prop 36. And LA has so many registered Republicans, over 1 million, more than any other county in the United States of America. We have 25% of the electorate in California. If we turn out to vote for Republicans, one of those two, I'm not going to pick it for you, but one of those two, and box out, basketball term, and box out the Democrats. And by the way, this also then goes for the other statewide races, like insurance commissioner, which is hugely important, and Secretary of State and Attorney General. We could win statewide races because we need people to actually turn out and punch above our weight. We always do. We're 25-something% of the electorate. But if Republicans vote and turn out under 30% of the electorate, another 20 points gets added from the decline to state voters. So then Bob's your uncle. So let's do this. And that's why we're saying come out on Saturday and learn how important it is to vote early, not often, but to vote early and to vote especially in May, and what we can do to make that voter turnout be bigger than ever starting today.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, Roxanne Hoge, Chairwoman of the LA GOP, thank you so much for calling in today. And Lord willing, we'll see you this Saturday.
Yes, sir. Can't wait.
All right, take care. There she goes, Roxanne Hoge. Give her a follow on X and some of the other social platforms that she's on. And she's also an accomplished actress, by the way. In fact, she's actually heading to Hollyweird in order to do something down there, I believe, probably for a movie or TV show. But anyway, she's a talented woman, and we're fortunate to have her here in the LA GOP. Well, talking about California and the kookiness of our state, you all remember Dr. Oz. Obviously, Dr. Oz was introduced to us by Oprah Winfrey. And I don't know how close Dr. Oz is anymore with Oprah, considering now first he ran as a Republican in Pennsylvania, obviously lost to Fetterman, which, by the way, we all thought was going to be a joke, but he ended up turning out to be a pretty moderate Democrat that has a brain. I think maybe that stroke probably helped him out. You never know. And then Dr. Oz not only ran as a Republican in Pennsylvania, but now he is part of Trump's administration. So 2 strikes against him probably in the world of Oprah Winfrey. But last week, this is a headline out of Town Hall, Dr. Oz, head of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, said there was significant Medicare and Medicaid fraud in California related to hospice services. Say it isn't so. You're telling me that one of the most populous states in the Union, California, 40 million people approximately, that we would have Medicare and Medicaid fraud, especially in the hospice services? Say it isn't so. The article goes on to say, we're not really surprised to find massive fraud happening under Gavin Newsom's watch. The guy was given tens of millions of dollars to end homelessness in the state. That money is gone, but homelessness has gotten worse, and we can connect those dots. This article went on to say California is already paying back $1.6 billion that they previously charged to the federal government for healthcare services given to illegal immigrants, but they have a much bigger fraud problem that hurts American citizens. So, Dr. Oz says, I've instructed Governor Newsom to produce within the next 3 weeks a comprehensive program, integrity action plan, to address major fraud in their healthcare systems. Well, all I can tell you is this. I believe that the Democrats are scared in California because I do believe, as Roxanne Hoge and I were talking a few moments ago, that there potentially might be a sea change in California to where not just Republicans, which many of us are sick of the direction of the state in terms of cost, paying the highest gas prices, insurance, some of the stupid laws that get passed that actually do more damage to the constituents rather than actually addressing the problem. But there are some Democrats out there that are free-thinking Democrats that don't necessarily just vote Democratic because that's what they do, and some independent voters out there that are also free-thinking that are saying, you know what, we've had the Democrats in control now for almost 20 years. And they've had a supermajority the majority of that time. And I think there's enough people, I'm praying and hoping that I'm right here. I think there's enough people that just might turn this state around, which is another reason why I encourage folks who are thinking about leaving California to not leave California. I totally get it, folks. You want to sell your, $2 million 5,000 square foot home here in Southern California, and you're going to take all that money and you're going to move to Oklahoma, you're going to move to Texas, you're going to move to Florida, and you're going to end up not being able to come back to California. Let's just be honest. Unless something changes from the top down, and that starts with the governor's race. And one of the things I'm going to talk to Jennifer Horn about from AM 870 in just a little bit is how bullish I feel in particular about the direction of our state. Granted, that's not to suggest that California voters won't let us down. They've let us down before. They've been fooled by the Democratic gibberish that comes in these campaign seasons, where they're able to tug at the heartstrings and tug at the empathy impulses of people, and then they end up voting against their better interests. And I believe that it is very possible that California might just give the other party a try. I mentioned earlier, polling shows massive pro-Trump swing among Hispanics. Now, how could this be when the media coverage, by and large, has been anti-ICE and anti-raids? This is, again, from Town Hall, and here's what Alex Brandon writes. He says, this news has to make the Democratic Party very unhappy this morning. They've spent the last year attacking the Trump administration as racist, bigoted, xenophobic, and Nazi-like over its immigration policy, accusing ICE and Border Patrol of rounding up brown people indiscriminately for deportation. However, according to Rasmussen, President Trump's approval rating among Hispanics is now at +9. That's right, +9. In other words, this shows that Hispanics understand illegal immigration and how inherently dangerous and unfair it is. It's also why the majority of mug shots of those arrested in and around Minneapolis are of white people. Hispanics are now roughly 1/5 of American voters, and even Newsweek can't ignore that they're trending Republican. Now listen, folks, I believe this is another thing that the Democrats are concerned about even here in California, because we have a pretty healthy Hispanic population up and down the state, mainly down here in SoCal, but basically up and down the state. And we should understand as Republicans that we need to embrace our Hispanic friends, especially those who have come here legally and fairly, who left Mexico or some other Latin American country for the freedom that we offer here in the United States of America. And if they've done it correctly, we should be the first to laud and praise them. And they are the ones who should be the first to dismiss those who would come here and jump in ahead of the line and do things illegally because they came here legally. And I think there's enough people now on the Hispanic side that are starting to say, you know what? That party that they told us to keep voting for when we came over here, they're really not helping us out. They're really not looking out for our best, for our better interests. Maybe we should give that other side a try. And that could be happening here, and that'll have deleterious effects here in California should they trend towards the Republican side this coming June for the primaries, and then ultimately in November for the general election for the midterms. And so that is pretty interesting, and no doubt that is going to have some repercussions and reverberations across the United States. Real quick before we take our break, something else that the Democrats are probably shaking in their boots over. How many of you heard that Trump moves to take over Los Angeles wildfire recovery from local and state officials? This is a story from Politico, and it says this: President Trump is pushing to take over wildfire recovery in Los Angeles. Trump signed an executive order Friday attempting to strip authority from the state and local governments to permit the rebuilding of homes and other structures destroyed in the January 2025 fires. The president's bid drew quick rebukes, of course, from Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. By the way, both of whom have done absolutely nothing. They've thrown out their rhetoric. They've said a few things, but in reality, they really don't want these homeowners to build the homes that they had prior to the fires. Let's just be honest. They want a third world, little city there where, everything is all confined, where you don't have to drive anywhere. These little, what do they call them, 15-minute cities or something like that. But let's just imagine that this goes through and President Trump is able to push through wildfire recovery in a way that the Democrats can't. And let's say a lot of it gets done before November of this year. That is going to be bad news for the Democrats. When we return here on your hometown station, Lord willing, we'll be joined by Jennifer Horn from the Morning Answer, AM 870. We'll talk a little bit more about the state of politics here in the state of California on your hometown. All right, we're back here. Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. Again, your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita. We are talking to the very beautiful and the eminent Jennifer Horn from the Morning Answer, AM 870. She makes your morning drive worthwhile, even if you don't have a cup of coffee. Jennifer Horn, how are you?
You are so sweet. With that introduction, you know what? You might just be stuck with me now. I'm never leaving.
Well, I could be the new Grant.
I think that's great. I love it. I know. Just keep the compliments coming. We'll be in perfect shape.
Well, we just had your friend and mine, Roxanne Hoge, on earlier, and we were talking about two events that are coming up here in Santa Clarita, my neck of the woods. This weekend on Saturday, there's a fundraising boot camp, and then there's a 2026 election kickoff with a who's who of people that are attending. And yourself, you will be there as well. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing this weekend.
Yeah, Roxanne is doing a great job. She runs the LA GOP, as you just heard, and she asked me to come out and just lend my support to some of the candidates that are going to be there, and of course also just give people a little bit of hope and inspiration maybe to get more involved this year. You know, I think there are a lot of us who maybe don't know where to start. Maybe we feel hopeless. Maybe we want to get more involved with our kids' school or grandkids' school, and so it's kind of nice to bring people together and just, you know, feel like you might have some backup and don't feel so alone, and really kind of help people feel either whether they want to run for office or help a candidate run for office, give them some ideas as to what you can do. It's, you know, community is a great thing, and I think one of the things that I say, Pastor, is that you can't be afraid to speak out anymore. We are in a time when people have to be unafraid. We have to be brave. We have to be courageous, and it really helps to know that you're not alone. So an event like this one I'm really honored to speak at, just to give people that hope. And, you know, we want a lot of happy warriors out there. There's so much negativity out there. I think this is all about promoting unity and getting people on track for especially an important midterm election year.
And just so our folks can understand this, you can go on to LAGOP website, hit calendar, and just check out the fundraising boot camp and the 2026 election kickoff. There's a QR code. I think it's $20 for the event, and it's at 2880 Centerpoint Drive, right here in Santa Clarita. Most of our folks know where it's at. So we know that Steve Hilton's going to be there. We know that Supervisor Don Wagner will be there. Herb Morgan, Michael Gates. You know, one of the things that I'm confident about this year, Jennifer, is I feel as if, and I was talking to Roxanne about this, and then also to Corinne Rankin not too long ago, I feel more bullish this time around about our governor's race and even our down-ballot races than I have in years past. What say you about that?
Yeah, I think, well, we have two incredibly great candidates that are in the governor's race for Republicans. That's unusual. You know, sometimes our Republican candidates at the governor's level have left a little bit to be desired, but I think both of these men are fabulous. What I hate to see is that, unfortunately, because we're a top two system, we don't get to have a primary. We're kind of robbed of that, and it would be amazing if we actually were able to have a Republican primary so that we could end up with the best candidate that the majority of California Republicans and independents would vote for. That's not the case, however. In California, we are a top two system, so the top two vote getters will get it, and a lot of times Republicans are going to be tearing apart support of one another. So it's unfortunate that the system is as it is right now, because I think we would be in such an incredible position to have just a great candidate, because we couldn't go wrong with either of them. But right now, it's a worry that we want to make sure we're not stripping the support away to allow for two Democrats to advance rather than getting a Republican for at least people to choose. But you know what? I'm going to look at the positive right now. Maybe miracles happen. Maybe we get two Republicans. Would that be fun if we had Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton in November?
Roxanne Hoge and I were both talking about that.
Dream.
Yeah, no, that would be, and by the way, that'd be the quickest way to get rid of the jungle primary, and the Democrats would spearhead it. So let's talk about some of the down ballot tickets here, because as I mentioned earlier, I do think we have a good cadre of people here that are running. For instance, Supervisor Don Wagner in Orange County, running for Secretary of State. I've had the privilege of meeting him, interviewing him. He is a well-spoken, articulate guy, and I think he'd be great in this role of Secretary of State. Then you've got Herb Morgan, who I've had the privilege of meeting at up here during one of our Lincoln luncheons for State Controller. And obviously, if there's any office in California that needs change, it's State Controller. And then, I don't know this young lady, but I'm going to have a privilege of meeting her this weekend, Stacy Korse-Gaden, I believe is how you pronounce her last name, for Insurance Commissioner, because obviously the person that we have in there now is completely feckless and incompetent. And then Michael Gates, who just came out a couple weeks ago in Huntington Beach running for AG. What do you think of those folks?
I think it's great, and I also am so intrigued by the idea that Steve Hilton has sort of put together his golden ticket, which includes Gloria Romero and Herb Morgan and Michael Gates, as you just mentioned. And I know those 3 of the 4 will be in Santa Clarita this weekend. I think that's an intriguing idea. I like it, and certainly I am just getting to know Herb Morgan and Michael Gates. But when you look at the individuals who represent us now, or maybe who don't represent us. You've got our own Attorney General who is caught up in his own fraud scandal. What I'm asking for is for someone who's maybe a little bit outside the box, who doesn't have all the attachments that a lot of this Democrat operating class has had over the last 20 years, to come in and give fresh eyes to all of these things. The taxpayers in California deserve more. We deserve to have our money spent in a way that is responsible, and these folks to this date, including Gavin Newsom, have not been good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. Our budget has only increased rather than decreased. We're spending more money, and we're getting less for it. And so to have someone kind of go in and give fresh eyes to things, I think would be hugely important to California, for the Attorney General's race as well, to empower local DAs to prioritize law and order and to take into account the crime that's going on in the streets and many times overlooked by DAs because of silly rules in California. I think both of those positions could really use someone new. Fresh blood, I think, is the best way to put it.
Well, this is an election year. Obviously, we've got the midterms coming up in November. And as I mentioned, I'm feeling more and more bullish about California. And one of the things that I think is going to be turn the tide for us here is the new California Post. And
I love it.
Nick Papps, I believe his name is, editor-in-chief.
Yep.
This is going to be, I think, a turning point in many ways, because most of our newspapers here have been one-sided, to say the least. And now we've got the California Post, and I do believe that the California Post will probably help us than hinder us in the midterms. What say you, Jennifer?
Yeah, what I think is great, I've totally geeked out about the California Post. First of all, I love a newspaper. I got it delivered to my driveway on day one. They've got a deal right now, by the way, $12 for 12 weeks of home delivery, which is great, a great way to try it out. And yes, even more than the one-sided mainstream news media in California, I think where we suffer is their lack of curiosity. And what I've seen over the last just 3 days since the paper's been out, the California Post, is that they've uncovered investigations. They've been talking about different pieces of fraud that I think we would have never heard of had this paper not been in existence. So I'm just excited that there is going to be oversight. Again, I don't believe that overnight we are going to change California from a blue state to a red state. But what would make me happy is to see a little bit of division, right? To see a little bit of Republican representation at the state level. That would be great. But also oversight from the mainstream news media, just to keep those people honest. Because to this date, again, we've had almost 20 years of one-party rule in the state, and people get a little bloated. They get a little loosey-goosey. They don't do the job when they don't think they have to answer to anybody. So whether that's winning elections or that's this newspaper that is going to be kind of keeping an eye on things, I think there are only benefits that come to us from that.
Breaking news today, Jennifer. The FBI executes a search warrant in Fulton County, Georgia, related to the 2020 election. If you remember, about a week ago, President Trump, while he was in Davos, kind of hinted at this. Actually didn't hint at it. He actually just said it straight out. And then here today, the FBI executes a search warrant in Fulton County related to the 2020 election. What are your thoughts as to what the FBI is looking for here, and how scared should the Democrats be if fraud of the magnitude that Trump has said is out there is actually found?
Yeah, I think when it's found. I'd be surprised, though. I have to say there's a warning here, because think about the years that have passed and the fact that there's going to be just a box of evidence with the big red marker on it saying the goods are in here, I think is very unlikely. People who are bad actors like to hide their tracks. So I'm glad to see that the FBI went in there. I hope that we get a good, honest investigation. The facts are that it's been a long time, and I hate to disappoint people, and I'm an optimist, but I'd be surprised if they caught a lot of stuff that was it just happened to be lying around. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. At least we're looking at it. I mean, look, this is one of the things that we have to be able to count on in our country, and that is safe and secure elections. We have nothing if we don't have that. And I think whether you're on the right or the left, right now people are just questioning everything. And I think the idea now needs to be rebuilding to make sure whatever happened in the past is never allowed to happen again. And the first step for that, I really believe, is voter ID. And certainly that's something that California Republicans are working on for this election, which I am all about. Carl DeMaio has got an effort going on, and I'd highly encourage, I think you have until February 6th, so next week, to sign the petition. If you haven't already, you can do it at reformcalifornia.org, because that will bring some accountability. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to actually be asked for your ID when you go into that voting booth?
That's just voter suppression, Jen. That's racism.
Yeah, right.
Well, talking about racism, what a great segue to talk about Ilhan Omar.
Exactly.
Because yesterday she was at an event, and she had some sort of substance thrown at her by somebody in the front row. We found out since then that this person in the front row was actually a lefty, and the substance that they thought was urine ended up being apple cider vinegar, which, by the way, has some very positive effects. So maybe this might have a positive effect on Ilhan.
I was just reading a great story about it.
Yeah, maybe Ilhan should take it. Or maybe she'll buy into it with her $30 million that she now has. But do you think this is a Jussie Smollett kind of thing where this was planned and, it makes it seem like she's the victim? And what do you think? You think there's something like that going on?
Look, I'd like to say first and foremost, if it's legit, the guy should be prosecuted. Nobody should have to fear for their lives as they stand at a podium. Nobody should. But when I watched this whole thing, I talked about it this morning on the Morning Answer. It just seems so convenient. And she came at him. She looked like a tough guy. I mean,
yeah.
She lunged at him. So good for her on that. But if somebody squirted something at me that was a brown foul liquid, I would definitely need to take a few minutes to powder my nose and to compose myself. And she didn't. And so I thought, that's kind of weird. I don't know. I don't know. Look, I hate to question everything, but it was the first thing that popped into my mind, especially when you see that the guy left a note for his neighbors to feed his dog because he thought he might be arrested later in the day. So, people have lost their ever-loving minds. I don't know. Everything is possible, I suppose, at this moment, and we won't know till we know, but it sure seemed awfully convenient that she just kept going. Strange. Not my reaction, I'll tell you that much.
No, and I completely agree. I thought the reaction on her end was strange, almost like she kind of knew that this was not going to be,
right,
aggressive in that manner. But listen, if somebody does that to you this Saturday, I will step in front of you.
Please, would you, and just keep your stinky liquids at home.
Yes, exactly. Hey, one last story here before we talk about the event again on this Saturday. I mentioned this at the beginning of the hour. Polling shows that a massive pro-Trump swing among Hispanics via Rasmussen. And I find this ironic with all of the negativity that the press has been, giving us about Minneapolis and Minnesota and the ICE raids all across the United States. I find it interesting that the Hispanics are looking through this, and they now have a +9 advantage towards Trump via Rasmussen. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that goes against everything that people have been saying. I mean, a lot of people have said that the Latino shift that was with President Trump disappeared with immigration enforcement. Look, I think most people still want to see immigration enforcement. What makes us uncomfortable is seeing our streets on fire and seeing the craziness and the anger and the back and forth that's happening and the rhetoric that comes from both sides of the aisle. It really does. We have to be honest about that. But I do think at the core, people still want to see criminal illegal immigrants sent back to their country of origin. They want to see them not roaming the streets. And it's very sad when you listen to stories of angel families who have lost their loved ones at the hands of illegal immigrants and don't seem to get the reaction that much of the country has had for these agitators who have found themselves in trouble in Minneapolis. And I think we all just need to remember that human life is important. All of those families deserve to have their stories told, and sadly, it's just very one-sided at this moment. So that doesn't surprise me if that's the pulling from Rasmussen, because I think at the core of it, people have not changed on that matter. They still want to see law and order served.
I completely agree. If you want to meet Jennifer Horn, not just hear her on the Morning Answer every day from 6 to 9, but if you want to meet her, come out to 2880 Centerpoint Drive this coming Saturday for the 2026 election kickoff with the LA GOP. You'll be able to meet yours truly, as well as LA GOP Chairperson Roxanne Hoge. Jennifer Horn, thank you so much for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit, and we're looking forward to seeing you this coming weekend.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you. Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right, dear. Take care. All right, when we return here on Politics in the Pulpit, we're going to conclude with a story about a man allegedly stabbed in Washington after saying he was a Christian. But before we do that, I wanted to hear a CNN interview where Tiffany Cross, who's one of the lunatics on Abby Phillips' show, basically saying that all of the ICE agents, they're white supremacists. So that'll be back when we return. All right, we're back here for our final segment here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. I wanted to highlight a segment from CNN. I was scrolling through Red State or one of those conservative outlets, and they had this clip of Abby Phillips' show. Of course, Abby Phillips herself is not the famous person on this show. It's really Scott Jennings, to be totally honest. In fact, Scott Jennings is the only sane voice on that panel, along with Ben Ferguson when Scott's not there. But there is an individual that comes on Abby's show every once in a while named Tiffany Cross, who I think used to have a show on MSNBC. I'm not terribly certain right now. But anyway, she is obnoxious. She's racist. She's an African-American woman, and it just she thinks she lives in 1950 Louisiana, and it's not. This is not 1950s Louisiana or Mississippi. But she really wants us to believe that it is. And so the way the left has framed our ICE agents, again, all they're doing is enforcing immigration laws that are on the books. That's all our ICE agents are doing. Tiffany Cross is now, pardon the pun, crossing the line and saying that these ICE agents are nothing more than the Proud Boys and white supremacists. Listen to this clip from Abby Phillips.
Furthermore, there's a reason why we have not seen a resurgence of the Proud Boys. And that is because I believe a lot of them are likely made ICE officers. Again, I've said this on the show before, I've not seen any deep dive reporting into who these people are, but they certainly adopt a lot of the ideology, a lot of the tactics, a lot of the violent tactics, a lot of the wearing masks, and it sounds a lot like their founder, what they initially put out, been kidnapped.
Did you just say ICE officers are militia?
Yes, have you not been paying attention?
Yeah, I
they
think
certainly
you're
mirror
stretching
the
a little
Gestapo.
bit. You know, that's very.
I don't think I'm stretching anything. I think we have seen,
That's
what we have
well,
not seen,
you know,
what we have
this
not
is
seen are
actually
gang members committing
this is a
violence. What we
federal
have
and
seen
state
are
mandate.
ICE agents
You're
Hold on one
pushing
second.
that a little bit
But
there.
Tiffany,
That's
you're
way
saying that
offside.
you're just making a supposition here. There's no concrete evidence of
You got to
actual
be careful.
Proud
That's
Boys members.
that's way
But there was
offside.
some supports.
DHS.
There was
These
some
are
men and
well,
women
actually,
serving
well,
the
actually,
government.
we have seen white supremacist tattoos
Risking their lives,
on,
serving the government,
risking their
and you're
lives, they're
calling them,
taking lives,
you're calling them
Kevin.
Proud Boy militia.
You're-
Did you say that?
Well,
I did not call them
there
a
has been
Proud
some
Boy
reporting
militia,
that
but
Tom
I think it's
Homan coming-
disgraceful
You're
that you're
way
sitting here.
offside.
Tom
Way
Homan
offside.
coming
I'm
to
actually not.
being
But I
put in
think that there
charge.
are white supremacist tattoos on their
White
necks. We have seen-
supremacist federal officers.
Yeah, white supremacist
Okay, that's
federal officers.
like, where are you going with this? Why would you say that?
I'm going with my eyes, ears, and logic. There have been multiple ICE agents who have
Men and women
Alright.
working for the federal
let me
government,
let Jim have a
risking
word.
their
Recording
lives,
and video.
carrying out a mandate, and they're white supremacists?
Yeah,
Yes,
Hold on,
and you're
hold
a
on.
member of a cult, so I
Hold
don't
on.
expect you to have
Whoa,
Let
logic.
Jim have a word. Go ahead, Jim.
whoa.
I think the generalizations here are a bit of an overreach.
Yeah, and
That being
let's not
said,
make
that-
personal
that
attacks.
Tom Homan.
Okay, real quick correction here. That was Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, not Scott Jennings. So I made a little boo-boo there. But Kevin is actually great and does a great job pushing back on Tiffany Cross's rhetoric. And then did you notice Abby Phillips kind of coming in there to kind of do a little bit of cleanup for Tiffany Cross, saying that you're just kind of just assuming something here, not necessarily saying this, stating this as fact, you know. So Abby does this a lot for her leftist panel there, trying to, you know, help them out. About a week ago, there's a young kid, literally looks like he just got out of diapers, a perfect example of a leftist soy boy, who said something about Trump being a part of a pedophile ring in relation to the Epstein files, and Scott Jennings just took him to task and actually told him on air, you better go ahead and retract that right now. And of course, the soy boy just kept going on about it. But then as soon as they were off the air, that soy boy guy, I forget his name right now, had to go on X and basically say, hey, listen, I misspoke. And this happens a lot. A lot of these guys on the left, especially when here's how I see this. These guys are not religious. These guys have no religious moorings at all. Politics is their religion. And they will go all in the same way that I would as a Bible-believing pastor, but I actually have a standard or an authority to appeal to, whereas these guys, their authority that they appeal to is the state. And so they are just as evangelistic for their positions as a missionary would be going to a foreign country trying to spread the gospel. And this is the left. The left has substituted politics for any kind of belief in a higher power. And you can see it, especially with some of these younger individuals who are just absolutely sold out evangelistically for their leftist ideology. The last story I wanted to quickly talk about here, man allegedly, it actually occurred, but this is how the news starts. Man allegedly stabbed in Washington State after saying he was a Christian. This is from a couple days ago. A man and his dog were stabbed early Sunday morning by a stranger after reportedly answering the assailant's question about the victim's religion. The victim, identified as Eddie, told police he was stabbed after identifying as a Christian. And not only was he stabbed, but his dog was stabbed. Evidently, he had a dog with him, or the dog was let out of a car, went towards the assailant, and the assailant not only stabbed the victim, but also the dog. But here's the thing. Does the left want a outright war on Christianity? Because I'm not suggesting that there is one now, but I do find it interesting that there was this guy in Washington State who obviously is mentally challenged, is walking around with a knife, walks up to some guy he doesn't know and says, hey, what religion are you? What do you identify as? And he says, after being pushed, I'm a Christian. And as soon as he says that, the guy takes out his knife and stabs him. Now, the suspect, he ended up dying at the hospital because the deputies had to do what they had to do. But the fact of the matter is, the guy that was stabbed was diagnosed with a collapsed lung, a blood clot in his brain, and all I can say is, I hope this guy recovers well. But I just think it's sad that that's where we are in our country, where the left has so demonized biblical Christianity that someone who identifies as a Christian would be treated like this. I wouldn't want this kind of treatment for anybody, frankly. All right, we're coming to the end of the show here, but I wanted to mention we do have a lot of great guests coming on Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station over the next few weeks. Many great candidates that I want you to hear. And so keep tuning in, same bat time, same bat channel here on your hometown station. We'll catch you here next week, Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Take care.